for you, like, did you have a lot of doubters? Did you have a lot of supporters? Were any of those motivating factors for you?
Um, hmm, Not sure I can answer that well. Um, to some, well, let's see. I guess, in some ways I didn't feel like I had many options, how everything was coming together at that time. It wasn't like I had many options. And my good friend, he had he had paved a way, in the business. So he had been in the business several years at that point. So he formerly had been a Century 21 broker in another
Okay.
state. So he had the background, and so I kind of came in on with him as my mentor and my coach, and I was kind of part time helping him do some things, administratively. So it just seemed like a good option for us given all the circumstances.
Sure.
I guess I would say my wife wasn't thrilled because she had married an engineer, and it wasn't like she was planning on me becoming a self-employed realtor at some point. So that probably
Yeah.
wasn't the greatest thing in the world. Another element of that is that her dad had been a factory worker for many years. So, it was kind of like you go to work, you get home, you're not
Yeah.
distracted, you're not, on the phone, you're not trying to do other things. So,
I was just talking to a group of agents yesterday. Like, I think that is a huge conversation piece that has to be had,
yeah,
with spouses and family members when it comes to getting
yeah,
into
yeah,
this business, and especially in the beginning, right? Like, what I always tell agents, like, what sacrifices are you willing to make?
really, yeah,
Are you willing to, sometimes, yeah, you sacrifices is family sometimes,
yeah,
depending
yeah,
on where you're at within your career.
right.
Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's, not being able to hang out and do certain things, it's because you're
Hmm.
trying to get your business up and running. Let's dive into the first couple years. You mentioned that, the 80% failure rate by the end of year two. What was it like for you, getting started into this business? And, how did you go about, really, focusing on how to build your real estate
Yeah,
business?
yeah. I kind of want to touch on one point that you
Sure.
just mentioned, which is that uh, in retrospect, I'm not so sure I handled it properly with my wife. That I probably should have had more of a discussion and listened to her more, and probably should have taken another job, and tried to do real estate part time or something. But jumped in. I did have a retirement plan that I could tap into if I had to, and so anyway, that was actually 1996 is when I officially started in real estate.
Okay.
And by the September, right around September '97, the handwriting was on the wall that I wasn't going to be able to survive the winter or a downturn in my personal book of business or anything like that.
Sure.
Um, and so I actually took a factory job for 6 months with the promise from the temp company that they were going to get me into some kind of technology based, opportunity, which I my personal experience was that I didn't get that until I demanded it, or I basically told them I'm leaving to go pursue it myself, because I wasn't getting it from the company that was supposed to be doing it for me. But it was interesting because I outlasted all the other temps for that 6 months. It was like people came and go, and I was the only one standing at the end of the 6 months, surprisingly,
Yeah.
because that wasn't my forte either. But it was very much a manual labor job. But um, let's see. So trying to get back to, I guess maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't succeed initially. We worked well together, my broker and I. I did, I did learn from him. I spent a lot of time with him. Um, I got through some other networking opportunities we had. I picked up some business that ended up being my first sales. One thing I'll say is that I made a connection that could have been huge. I mean, we made a connection to an investor company, small group that had 30 houses, and they ended up putting 20 of them on the market with me, and I got 11 of them in contract with both sides. I had the investor on the buy side and on the sell side. This all happened in that first 2 years.
Yeah.
And come August of '97, um, that crumbled. Basically, it turned into there wasn't any money. The investors, the initial owners, really weren't going to come away with much of anything.
Sure.
So it fell apart really close to the closing table, and that set me back because that would have been several tens of thousands of dollars in commission that would have helped me through the winter.
Sure.
So there was a trigger that happened that can't say that we expected that to happen, but
Sure.
had to roll with the punches.
Now, when you went, to take that other job, was in your mind, was it just, hey, this is temporary, just to kind of
Yeah,
get through and then get me back on my feet, or and
yeah,
real estate was always, on the forefront, or was it like, maybe real estate's really not for me, and I should
yeah,
probably look at a different career path? I mean, obviously, I know the answer long term now because I'm
yeah,
talking to
yeah.
you today,
Right,
but
right.
at
Yeah,
that time, in that moment, kind of where was your mind at?
yeah, yeah. I'd say initially I was, it was interesting. We'd get these breaks. You're working in a factory, you get a 15-minute break for a coffee or something, and I would try to make a quick phone call. Try to stir some business up. Um, had a couple of opportunities, but those didn't materialize really. So I was trying to chase business, during work on lunch, lunch half hour, break time, and then after work, I tried to do a few things. So I had managed to sell a couple of things, but eventually I put my license on the shelf. And I didn't just work at a factory. The first 6 months were at a factory. Then I actually bounced around probably five or so different jobs, just a whole wide range of jobs, but most of those were in the kind of technology, AutoCAD, engineering fields, which
Yep.
was one of the best parts of that was I got to work for a civil engineering design company that did developments of subdivisions and stuff. So I got to
Hmm.
learn some of the ins and outs of things like, why do they put retention ponds, and I don't know if
Yeah.
our crowd would know this, but you're putting in so many hard surfaces with paved roads and shingled roofs and all these things that would normally cause the water to run to the runoff would go into the streams and flood downstream. So you got to create a way for that to be slowed down. So they
Mm.
have retention ponds and detention ponds and things like that. And we got into a lot of design that was things like subdivisions, whether they had sewer systems or they had septic systems. So
Right.
I got to kind of expand my knowledge during that time. We had a great group of guys, just a lot of fun. One of the most fun environments I've ever been in, goofing around, joking with each other, and getting good work done, and playing basketball together
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So, but again, I would move on from time to time, trying to find the better match or whatever. So,
Sure.
but anyway, this is kind of going back to, I said in 2003, my dad passed away, and he was sick with bladder cancer for about a year. And so
Mm.
that's where my story transitioned back into real estate. I kind of wanted to say this. I don't want to. This is not meant to diminish my dad, but his view of real estate wasn't the greatest. It wasn't like
Sure.
he was my guidance counselor, and he always thought he wanted me to be a lawyer, and I had no interest in that. But I think if he had really understood what real estate is about, I think he would have really been proud of, what we do and the variety of things that we get into and how we, collaborate with a variety of people and work through a transaction and all that stuff. So, but
Yeah.
his view of it wasn't really what it really is, I'd say. So,
Well,